This presentation is a video case analysis of Nike by Isaac Fell, Logan Ryerson, Kyle Setelin, and Landon Tracy.
The discussion of Nike's strategies. So the new triple-double strategy is double the cadence for impact of innovation, double its speed to market, and double its direct connections with consumers. They are also implementing the amplify growth. So this model will decrease the amount of stores. There will be 25% fewer styles in the market, as well of shoe styles. So Nike is trying to have more control over its system. They are implementing experts into their various different stores, like Foot Locker, for example. They are very specific on who's now being able to sell their products. They're decreasing the amount of distribution partners from around 30,000 to 40. So Nike has also gotten to the personalization from the data collected within its apps. It's also implemented a system to allow Nike to track the wellness of their users by implementing chips inside of some models of the shoes. This will help Nike better fix each individual user's health by their strategy of implementing fitness, and their coaches as well to satisfy that user. So really Nike is getting focused on really making the consumer happy. They're doing this by better technology, more data, and personalization.
This is a SWOT analysis diagram, which represents the 4 parts used to analyze a company's strategy. These parts are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We will start with the internal factors of a company's resources and capabilities. Nike has many strengths, the first of which are its strong brand recognition, large customer base, and relationship with popular athletes. Nike is one of the most recognizable and valuable brands of the world. Everyone can recognize their iconic swoosh logo and have seen many advertisements featuring well-known athletes like Michael Jordan. Nike has a loyal base of customers that help them maintain a competitive advantage. Acquiring other brands such as Converse and Hurley have enabled Nike to remain competitive in this market, and using manufacturers outside of the US allows them to keep manufacturing costs low. Excellent marketing capabilities such as promotions, endorsement contracts, and social media has proven to be effective marketing tools that allow them to target more customers. It also has the largest market share in this industry. Although Nike has many strengths, they have some weaknesses also, such as high long-term debt and high reliance on the US market. As of fiscal year 2021, Nike's long-term debt was $9.4 billion, and although it is a global company, it still heavily relies on US sales for growth. It also lacks in diversification, as most of the companies it has acquired, like Converse and Hurley, are still the same type of products as the Nike brand. Another weakness is Nike's reputation for poor labor conditions in the foreign countries where its products are manufactured. Though Nike has made efforts to remedy this problem, it still persists. Nike also has weak pricing control because a lot of its customers are wholesalers and retailers, and its low sensitivity against pricing, which allows the prices of their products to vary. Nike also has problems with having a consistent strategy, where their actions do not match with the company's goals.
When looking at the external environmental analysis for Nike using the Porter's 5 forces, the first force we can look at is threat of new entrants. Nike is a multinational corporation which has already set a legacy for themselves in the footwear industry, apparel, and equipment industry. So new companies entering the market and dominating just as Nike does is not as high as maybe potentially Nike trying to enter a new industry such as premium footwear. Since they're not already sustainably developed in that, they may have troubles. But when companies come in trying to do what Nike already does, Nike will most likely be superior in that situation. When looking at threat of substitutes, Nike has already been established to have one of the strongest research and development teams in the industry. They also have more than 25,000 global patents, which is more than anyone in the athletic brand category. But one thing that may cause problems to Nike and can cause problems to Nike is as more and more counterfeit products are created, where you can see people make shoes that look exactly like Nike and they sell them for cheaper, but they're not actually Nike shoes. That can cause them problems for threat of substitutes. One problem that arises from bargaining power of buyers is whenever they have a customer, they can easily switch from brand to brand. It doesn't require any extra effort to buy Nike shoes, and then the next time you need shoes, buy a different brand's shoes. So in that way, it does pose a small threat to the bargaining power of the buyers. But Nike also has large brand loyalty, large quality products, and they offer a wide variety of products which can help combat that. When looking at the bargaining power of suppliers in the athletic wear and shoe industry that Nike is in, there are plenty of suppliers that sell the materials that they need. So suppliers are not necessarily at an advantage, and Nike does have a small advantage since they have such a large corporation, such a big name. There's some goodwill offered in that. So suppliers are going to want to be the suppliers for Nike so that they can get more business from other companies by saying things like, oh yeah, we're the supplier of Nike, so we must be good because Nike uses us. Regarding the rivalry among existing competitors, Nike has many other large competitors such as Adidas and Puma and New Balance or Skechers, but one way that they have to stay ahead of the game in their competition is by keeping quality up and finding other ways to market themselves, new ways to market themselves to show that they're the best company. So they have to be able to stay on top of everything from a competitive edge because they are in a very competitive industry. The top 3 general environment factors for Nike are the need to become more environmental friendly, maintaining their brand using social media, and change in tax manufacturing laws. Starting with the first one, the need to become more environmental friendly, this is extremely important for Nike because they put out a lot of pollution from manufacturing everything that they do. And not only that, but in today's day and age, people are starting to move towards wanting to use more environmental friendly, sustainable material, which is something Nike needs to stay on top of in order to be ahead of the game. The second one, maintaining their brand using social media, is also a key factor for Nike because they currently use social media, but as new social medias develop and as new trends develop, Nike needs to make sure that they're staying on top because when they reach consumers through social media, they're going to be able to get more sales and more revenue. Lastly, the change in tax and manufacturing laws. On a corporate level, Nike needs to stay on top of every law and make sure they're abiding to them. And for corporations, things are always changing, so it's very important that they stay on top of what they're supposed to do.
So now we're going to discuss Nike's financial analysis for the year 2022. And what we did is we compared Nike's financial ratios to the industrial averages. And before we get into the specific percentages, I want to go over each ratio and how they're calculated and what they mean for the company. So return on equity, this measures how profitable the business is in relation to its equity. It's calculated by dividing net income by shareholders' equity. Your current ratio is a liquidity ratio, and this one measures a company's ability to pay off its short-term obligations, and this is calculated by dividing current assets by current liabilities. Your return on assets ratio is a profitability ratio that provides how much profit a company can generate from its assets, and this is going to be calculated from net income divided by total assets. Your net profit margin, this is a measurement of how much net income is generated as a percentage of the revenue, and this is calculated by subtracting revenue minus costs and then dividing that by revenue again. Your debt to equity ratio, this one measures the extent to which a company is able to cover its debt. This is calculated by dividing total debt divided by total shareholders' equity. And so now let's look at the actual percentages for each company. So Nike has a higher return on equity than the industrial average. That's a good sign for the company. The current ratio is also higher for Nike than the industrial average, which means that it has a higher ability to pay off its short-term obligations. It also has a higher return on assets than the industrial average. That's a good sign as well. That profit margin is also significantly higher, which means it generates a lot more profit than the average company in the industry. And then the debt to equity ratio, this one is significantly higher than the industrial average, and a debt to equity ratio you typically would want it to be lower because that means that your company is not as highly leveraged and has more risk to go into default. But having more debt is not always a bad thing for a company, because having more leverage does allow you to expand and do other things with your operation that having no debt would not allow you to do. So now let's go into Nike's financial analysis for year 2021. So we see that it was also had a higher return on assets ratio than the industrial average. In 2021, it also had a higher return on equity than the industrial average. Its gross margin was higher. Its net margin was also higher. Quick ratio was also higher. Current ratio was higher. The total debt to equity was actually lower in 2021, and its interest coverage ratio was also lower than the industrial average, which is a good sign. And its asset turnover ratio is higher, which is good because that means that it's able to turn over its assets more quickly. And its inventory turnover is also higher than the industrial average, which means that it can turn over its inventory quicker, and that means that it's not having to have its items on its shelf life, and it's better for the company. All right, so now let's look at the financial analysis for year 2020. Nike had a higher return on equity than the industrial average, which is good. Its return on assets was also higher. Its current ratio is still solid. Looking at its net profit margin, it's also higher than the industrial average that year. And its debt to equity ratio is also higher than the industrial average that year. And for year 2020, that was the year that the pandemic really shot off. So that's a main reason why the industrial average is so low in a lot of these, because a lot of companies were struggling. But Nike still did pretty good for that year, so that's pretty impressive. All right, so now let's discuss how the strengths of Nike can overlap with opportunities for that company. So one of the strengths we mentioned before is that Nike had a strong brand recognition. The opportunity that this brings about is that consumers are going to be more aware of Nike and their products. Just having a strong brand and people knowing that brand is going to make other people want to buy it. Another strength of Nike is that they have a large customer base. This is going to increase the company's ability to grow, because having a large consumer base means that you can reach more people and grow your company that way. Another strength of Nike is that it has relationships with famous athletes. The opportunity this brings about for the company is that products will be more attractive to consumers, because whenever somebody sees a famous person using a certain product, it makes them want to use it as well. Another strength of Nike is that they acquire other brands. This is going to increase their market share and ability for growth. Another strength of Nike is that they have a low manufacturing cost, and this is going to allow the company to earn a higher profit, because if you can decrease your costs, that's going to give you a higher net margin. So always want to limit those as much as possible. Nike also has excellent marketing capabilities. That's going to help the company reach more consumers. And another one of Nike's strengths is that it has a large market share, and that the opportunity that brings about is that it already gives the company a strong foundation. They've already built a very large market share, and that just allows them to grow even more. So now we're going to discuss the 5 top concerns for Nike. The first one's going to be counterfeit products. These can tarnish the image of the brand. When people make counterfeit products, the product is generally going to be of less quality. It's going to be cheaper to make, and then they're just going to throw the logo on there and make people believe that that product is the true product. And so when people buy those products and then realize that the quality is awful, then that can really damage the reputation of that brand. Another concern for Nike is marketing budget pressure. Right now, their competitors like Adidas is spending a lot more on advertising, and it's going to increase the pressure on Nike. Another concern for Nike is the economic uncertainty. Currently, the U.S. is in a recession and has high inflation rates. And the U.S. is one of Nike's biggest markets. So when the economy here is going on a downturn, then it's going to be less profitable for the company, because people are going to have less spending power right now with inflation rates being so high. It's going to cost more to make their products, along with it's going to cost more to distribute the products, because of the gas and oil is so high as well. So those are going to be another concern for Nike. So another one is going to be increased competitive pressure. That's going to be these new emerging brands in the market that are trying to take away Nike's market share. And the last main concern for Nike is the trade tensions between the U.S. and China. Those are both Nike's highest markets. So if there are trade tensions between them, then that can definitely create problems for Nike if they cannot import or export their products from each company, or if higher tariffs are raised to do that, and that can really negatively impact the company.
One recommendation for Nike, this comes along with the Internet of Things devices that Nike is producing, such as those chips and also the app. With more data collected means that there's more data that you have to protect. So more investments into protecting that data and the user information. Another thing is more investments into the audits of the producers of Nike equipment in other countries. There is a problem with how much information is actually getting audited in those factories overseas. There could be lying on reports. That's usually the case. There needs to be more investment in that auditing to make sure that the environment that those workers are working in is safe, and that those workers are respected as they should be. Also, the improvement of factory conditions, that's a huge thing as well. Also, this helps with the brand as well. It's really hard to put out that image of health whenever the employees are in bad working conditions. So those are just a few strategies and recommendations to make Nike even better.